been a Pittsburgh police officer for 15 years. Something I wanted to do ever since I was a little kid. My family still to this day make fun of me because I used to run around the house handcuffing my little brother to things when I was a kid. And it's just something that's always stuck with me. I've wanted to do it forever. I've had some amazing opportunities since I've been on the job with the department. Started off my first 5 years working in the Hill District. I learned from some fantastic officers. You know, they weren't necessarily supervisors, but they were like mentors to the younger guys. And you know, they helped me tremendously along the way, but then I also realized as my career progressed that that's something I wanted to do as well, and I wanted to help mentor and teach the younger officers. And you know, over the course of the 15 years, I've just decided to take more of a supervisory path. Some people go more towards the detective path, or they prefer to stay in patrol. But I just always wanted to kind of have the ability to affect change in the department, so I chose to go more the supervisory route. We spent a lot of time in Zone 5 when I worked in the narcotics unit, doing drug work out in the neighborhoods. And then when I was promoted to sergeant, I was transferred from the narcotics unit to Zone 5, which was the first time I'd ever been assigned there. And I spent about 2 years in Zone 5 as a sergeant. And when I was promoted to lieutenant, I went back to Zone 5 for about 2 more years. And even though I got my start in Zone 2, I'd spent all my time as a supervisor in Zone 5. And I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the diverse neighborhoods. The officers in Zone 5 they're phenomenal. I mean, they're great to work with. As you progress through your career, I think you have the ability to see in the different supervisors, hey, if I was the boss, I would take this from this supervisor and this from that supervisor and try and be like the best supervisor I could be. And having the ability to do that at the command level is a very unique opportunity, because there are only 10 commanders in the city. But to be able to run the whole station and kind of set policy, you know, do things for officers when they do a good job, show appreciation, and also when officers mess up, you know, to be able to have the ability to differentiate between an honest mistake and, you know, willful misconduct. And if it's an honest mistake, to kind of use it as a teaching moment and not, you know, not come down really hard on the officer and crush his morale. You know, the neighborhoods in Zone 5 are very diverse. You know, you have Bloomfield, which is a, you know, it's an older Italian neighborhood. They're very proud. You know, I go to the community meetings and you know, they're very much into community events, and they're just a very proud neighborhood. You know, we have Highland Park, beautiful old architecture. Again, you know, great citizens groups out there. It's a very strong community group. You know, you go out to Homewood, and while we see a lot of violence in Homewood, I think a lot of times it gets a bad rap. People think that, you know, well, nobody cares, but I can tell you that that's not the case. Just about a week or so ago, we were invited to participate in a peace walk. It was a 5K, and I was asked if I could bring, you know, 1 or 2 officers with me, just to show that, like, we're involved in the community. And I asked the officers if anyone would be interested in walking with me, and I got 20 officers signed up. They all came out, and the community was so appreciative. We had about 100 people from the community that were walking with us. They were hugging the officers. They were just so glad to have a police presence and to work with the community. And it's events like that, you know, even in the higher crime areas, you see that there are people that really do care about the neighborhood. And I think it helps the officers, especially the younger officers that hear, you know, oh, Homewood's so dangerous, Homewood's so violent. They go out there and they see, you know, this little old lady who's afraid to leave her house, and she pulls the officer aside at the peace walk and says, you know, here's where I live, like, please come check on me. You know, I really want the police, you know, involved in the neighborhoods. And it makes them realize that there are people that really care about the neighborhoods, and the ones that do are very passionate about it. You know, they're the ones that'll take to the street and march with signs. And you know, it's just great. Like, the neighborhoods are all different from one another, but the people involved in each neighborhood, you know, truly care about the area that they live in. You know, the police, I think, have a unique role, and I try and tell people this at the community meetings so they have an understanding of what our mission is. And I always tell them our mission is it's two-pronged. We have to do a better job of engaging the community, reaching out to specifically younger people, because once you've reached a certain age, like you're 19, 20 years old, you've pretty much formed an opinion. You either like the police or you don't like the police, and it's really hard to change someone who's already had that mindset. So one of our missions is to reach out to younger people before they've really decided on how they feel about the police. So we're doing a lot of community engagement. We have stuff going on every day where we have officers out in the community. But the other part of it is we still have to get out there and aggressively get the most violent offenders off the street, because if you have one without the other, it's not going to work. We're trying really hard to strike a balance where we're still out there cleaning up the street, but we're doing it in a way that shows the community that we're part of them and we care. Some of the initiatives that we have going on now is we have one officer who goes to one of the elementary schools once a week. He reads to the kindergarten classes. They love him. I went with him a couple times, and he walks in the room and they yell, "Officer Paul," and they're tugging at his uniform, and he does a little show and tell. And it might not seem like a big deal to some people, but these kids come from very, very poor homes. The teachers were telling me that sometimes they'll come to school and they haven't eaten anything, by the time they get to school at 9 in the morning, and they might not eat anything until they come back the next day. So these are the houses that we're responding to on domestic violence calls and drug calls. And so for these little kids to be able to see an officer in uniform and identify with that officer in a positive way, that goes a lot towards, eventually when we get called to his home, he's going to see the police as an ally and not an enemy. And obviously we have to do that on a much broader basis. We can't just say, oh, we'll go to one class one day a week and everything's going to be fine. So we're in the process now of meeting with a couple different schools, and other schools have heard about what we're doing, and I've been getting emails saying, will you come to our school? So I'm trying to get enough officers to volunteer, but we still have to cover the 911 calls. So we have about 3 officers from patrol that have volunteered, and then we also have community outreach officers that's basically like their job, their full-time job every day is just to handle issues in the community, whether it's complaints, community concerns, school visits, church visits. So we try and kind of spread the wealth so all the officers get involved. But that's just one thing we have going on. We just partnered with a lady who owns a couple of McDonald's restaurants in our district, and they're in an area also that is an economically depressed area, and she wanted to start a program where it's called Coffee with a Cop. So every Thursday now, we have 2 of our officers go to each of the 2 locations, and for 2 hours every Thursday, her customers know that if they want to just come in and talk to the police, whether it's an issue they're having in the community, maybe they're afraid to have the officers come to their house because they don't want the neighbors to see a police car parked in front of the house. They don't want to come to the station. They can go to these McDonald's restaurants, and the officers are there. They're available to answer any questions, or just sit and talk to the members of the community, just to give them a chance to get to meet the officers that are answering the 911 calls, coming to their house, and just see them in a friendly environment, and not when the officers pull up because there was a shooting or because there was a domestic. And last week was our first week doing that. We got awesome feedback. People were emailing. I guess they handed out my business cards because people I'd never met before were emailing me saying, "This is great. I hope you guys keep doing it." When I came to Zone 5, we had 1 community resource officer, and Chief McClay was very supportive of allowing the commanders to do what they want with their personnel, and I felt there was this need to have more officers dedicated strictly to doing community work. Luckily, we had an academy class that just graduated, so we had the benefit of a few extra officers on the street. So we added a second community resource officer, and Karen does outreach with the businesses. That's her primary role. We wanted to make sure that the business owners, particularly in some of the rougher neighborhoods, that they felt that they had a point of contact if there were issues going on, whether there was drug activity in front of their store or theft from the store, anything that affected the businesses. So Karen is our outreach person for businesses. And then we hired 2 more officers, and they worked together, and we formed what's called the Community Response Card, or the CRC. And they don't take 911 calls. They go to the community meetings, and they listen to the complaints and the concerns of the citizens, and then they go out and all day long they just address those concerns. So the 2 things they do is the complaints from the meetings and the 311 complaints that come into the station. So whether it's drug activity or abandoned cars or an unsafe condition on a street, or juveniles loitering on the corner smoking weed after school, and a lady calls because she's afraid to come out of her house. They just go all day long and just handle the 311 complaints. And again, we've just gotten fantastic feedback, because before, everyone was out answering calls. We didn't have the ability to have someone just dedicated to this full time. So we would hand out these complaints to officers and say, hey, in between the calls, try and handle these complaints. And the complaints were falling through the cracks. The people never heard back after the complaint. So these officers, that's their full-time job. And part of that is also doing follow-up. So once they go out and handle the complaint, if the person identifies themselves, if it's not an anonymous complaint, part of their job is to call them or stop by their house and say, hey, we received your complaint, we looked into it, here's what we did. We cited this kid, we wrote these tickets, we towed these cars, whatever it was, just so you know that your call didn't fall on deaf ears. We just have so many initiatives going on right now that I wish we had more bodies, because every day someone's calling the station saying, hey, at our community center, we're having this family fun night, which they just had at the Kingsley Center over in Larimer. Well, we're gonna have all these activities and stuff, and we would just like the police to come and hang out and, have something to eat with the kids, and just go to all the different rooms where the activities are going on and participate, so the kids can see the officers in like a friendly environment. And that's something we did a couple weeks ago. So we just have that kind of stuff, like it's almost on a daily basis now. And that's something it's very different from before, when our department was, it was focused on what you would consider the traditional policing, just going out there and arresting people and taking them to jail. And that's something that I did for a long time. I mean, I worked in the Hill District. I was in the narcotics unit. I worked undercover. I spent 2 years buying heroin and crack cocaine. I mean, that's really what I was concerned about. But as you get older and as you progress through your career, you start to see that, people aren't going to support the police if we don't show them that we're really a part of the community. The officers I work with, they're good officers. They have families, they have wives and husbands and kids, and they just want to come to work, make a difference, and get home safe at the end of the night. And when they go out in the street and they're constantly being confronted with, protests and, chants related to, Ferguson or the incident in New York City, that's not who we are. Our officers are fantastic, hardworking officers, and when the communities see these headlines that are misreported without all the facts, they associate our officers with those stories, and it makes it very hard for our officers to do their job effectively, to go home safe at the end of the night.